We begin this course by planning out our level blockout. So when we plan the level blockout, we want to establish the narrative, establish a location, establish the events, and what this leads to is the creation of a level design document. In the level design document, it's useful because it defines the scope of what we're building. It defines the sequence of gameplay, sometimes referred to as gameplay beats. It also defines the length of gameplay. Even though this will change during iteration, it gives us a good basis to know the length. It also helps show variety of gameplay, sometimes referred to as rational level design, like reach the location, defeat the enemies, that kind of thing. The level design document can also be useful in determining production needs and dependencies. What this means is the other people who work in the game studio can help bring the level design vision to life through audio work, effects work, artwork, etc. Next, we looked at building our rough blockout. At this stage, we tried to establish our initial macro scale, the real high-level structure of the entire level, including the spatial relationships between buildings, between player paths near and far, between different things that we could see in the immediate vicinity and distant landmarks. We also developed the scale relationships of all those things. And when we built the level geometry, we used primitive shape meshes from the starter content, and we used it to build the exteriors and also the playable space. Often at this stage, we just laid out the player path, the walkable areas throughout the level. And interiors at this stage were boundaries only. We tried to establish mainly just the footprint of the buildings in the world. Next, we began our detail blockout. At this stage, we started working on architecture, the architecture of the buildings themselves, the architecture of small connective elements around the landscape like stairwells. And at this point, this lent a nice recognizable identity to more of the spaces. We looked at trying to establish that as well. We also refined the spatial relationships throughout the level, including more detail that lent a certain interplay between interior and exterior player paths, the connective spaces when one player would enter or leave a building, for instance. And when we built the level geometry, we used proxy meshes that we built earlier, and we used these to construct interior playable spaces and considered the level design of those areas. And at this point, we also tried to focus a little bit on modularity of construction, including the way we built worker houses and were able to replicate them throughout the entire environment for greater efficiency, really. With the level design geometry largely done at this point, we looked at ways to refine the blockout. The first way to refine the blockout we looked at was to ensure effective playtesting and iteration. This was done through a collision pass, which we added through blocking volumes or static mesh holes. And we also looked at a way of refining the blockout through basic lighting. And this was done to increase visibility, playability, and just the general clarity of intentions of the level designer. And also possible ways we can use basic lighting for narrative or gameplay emphasis.